Hello again. We are starting a new unit on factoring, and that is taking a polynomial and separating it into a bunch of factors that multiply to give that polynomial, if that's possible. So today we're going to start by talking about factoring using the distributive property, which you've heard of before. So let's just review what it means to multiply a monomial by a polynomial. If I wanted to multiply, let's say, 2ab times 3a squared b cubed plus 7a minus 8b minus 5, what would that look like? Well, following the rules that I've learned before, I would get 6a to the third, b to the fourth, plus 14a squared b minus 16ab squared minus 10ab. And that's just taking the 2ab and multiplying it by each term that's in parentheses separated by pluses or minuses. All right, and similarly, if I had 5x times x squared minus 3x plus 9, I would multiply 5x by all three of those terms that are in the parentheses, and I would get 5x to the third minus 15x squared plus 45x. Okay, so the problem is, how do I go from what is now the answer to what is now the question? How do I work backwards? All right, so here's what we do. I need to be able to get from that first answer that you saw back to the original question. Okay, so what I do is I look at the four terms in the question, and there they are, and I notice that as far as the numbers, the coefficients go, they can all be divided by 2. Okay, so I look at the numbers first, and then I look at each letter separately. So now I'm looking at the a's. There's a to the third, a to the second, a, and then a. And all of those can be divided by a, but nothing bigger than that, no higher exponent of a, just a to the 1. And then I look at the b's. There's b to the fourth, then there's a b, and then there's a b squared, and then there's a b in the last term, and all of those can be divided by b. So what that means is all of those terms can be divided by 2 times a times b. So that's what we call the greatest common factor. And so in order to factor that properly, then I put everything in a table, all four terms in a table. And then I know that the greatest common factor is 2ab, so I'll write that to the left. And then what I'll do is I'll just divide each of those four terms by 2ab and see what I get. Okay, so if I divide the first term by 2ab, I get 3a squared b to the third, and then I get 7a, and then I get negative 8b, and then I get negative 5 for the last one, all dividing by 2ab. All right, so that's the factorization of that one there. And as you can see, I got back to the original question that I started with at the beginning of this presentation. Okay, so here's another example. If I wanted to factor 5x to the third minus 15x squared plus 45x, I'm looking at those three terms and looking at the numbers first. They can all be divided by 5. Then looking at the x's, they can all be divided by x. So what that means is my greatest common factor is 5x. All right, so setting up a table, I've got one column for each of the terms, and it's all in one row. Remember, the greatest common factor was 5x, so I simply divide each of those three separately by 5x. And for the first one, I get x squared. For the second one, I get negative 3x. And for the last one, I get positive 9. So what that means is the factorization of that polynomial is 5x times x squared minus 3x plus 9. So that is factoring by using the distributive property in a kind of backwards way. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I will see you tomorrow.